Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Thai master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And we're also so happy that Anne-Marie is able to rejoin us. She's been away for a few weeks, and we've missed her beautiful, happy smile and so forth. So it's good to have you back, Anne-Marie.
It's good to be back. Thank you for your lovely introduction. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. We have a guest joining us today, so that's going to make it even better. But I've done the last couple of Mondays solo with just my guest, and I definitely missed having your presence here. So love having you back. It's really, really good.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to be here. Really happy.
And our guest today is Dr. Ravi Iyer, who is one of the most interesting medical resumes I've ever seen. He has a whole series of things that he does, and I'm not even going to attempt to do justice to them all. I'm going to let him do that for us. But first, I'm going to bring him on screen and say, Ravi, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Walt. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
We're glad to have you. And you have a lot of things going on. You have organizations, you have different kinds of practices. Give us like a lay of the land of all the stuff that you're doing.
I actually have only one thing going on. All the other stuff is all revolves around that one thing.
Ah.
The one thing going on is something I learned very early on in my life. When I was about 14 to 16 years old, I found that I had a gift, and that was I could make people around me calm. I could give them, I could be a space where the anxieties of their life would be less pressing. Now, at that time, it was a teenage thing, so, teenage usually it's highs or lows. You're either on Mount Everest or you're in the abyss. But I found when I was a teenager, I found that I could help my friends take the long view on things, and then I just translated that into a life in medicine. So all the things I do are basically tools that I use to achieve the central goal of removing fear, doubt, confusion from people's lives. And that's all I do.
That's a good goal. Well, that's a series of goals, but that's a great series of goals to have, because obviously when we get ourselves into that better mindset, where we're less fearful, where we're less anxious and so forth, we're going to heal ourselves better. We're going to have better lives. Everything about our experience is going to improve. So I like that orientation. That's a good one.
Yeah. So I did my high school, went to college, finished my medical degree. All of those are basically tools and methodologies I use to achieve this one goal. I did research because I was curious as to how science could be used to benefit medicine. In that process, I learned how to work with molecules. From there, I figured out how I could use that knowledge to create novel medicines that were useful in diverse areas. But in every case, the people who come to me in my practice, they are not so much concerned about a disease. They are concerned about, I have a problem that's preventing me from experiencing life the way I want to experience it. And can you help me experience it the way I want it? And my goal as a physician, whether I cure or do not cure, is always one thing, and that is, I will be by your side and help you navigate the balance of your life with this new set of circumstances that has come into your life. Either I will remove those set of circumstances, or if I can't remove it, I will teach you how to live with it. So that's how it is. So in that process, I use a diverse set of tools, some in science, some in psychology, some in behavior, some in language. I write. So whatever it is, I do whatever is necessary by any means. I use that famous Malcolm X phrase, we will do so by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by any means necessary.
All right. That's good. I like that. And you have a clinic in Loudoun County, Virginia, which, by the way, is just up the road from where I used to live. I lived for 10 years in Warrenton, so I was about a half an hour away from where your clinic is. But yeah. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't know you were there while I was there.
Where are you now?
I'm in Connecticut, near Hartford.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I used to be in Boston, so it's not too far.
Oh, okay. No, not far at all. A couple hours away.
Yeah.
So, the clinic, I guess, is kind of home base for what you do, but I get the impression also that you're not limited geographically. I get the impression that you work with people from all around the globe. I'm not sure how far your reach is.
Well, the clinic is where I started my work back, but then as I got better and more well known, I get people from all over the world. Now, being in Washington D.C., you're a magnet for people who visit Washington D.C. for various reasons.
Right.
And so what happens is, in my clinic, we have, in addition to seeing patients with insurance, we also have a program which allows affordable care for people who don't have insurance. So a lot of tourists who travel to this country on visitor visas to see the sights, when they fall sick, they end up at my clinic because I'm one of the more affordable doctors. I deliberately keep the rate at $75 a visit, and that's it. We don't charge anything more than that. So that's an affordable rate for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's
designed to cover the basic cost of seeing them, not necessarily to run a profit. So it's a dimension of my clinic which is more service oriented, and as a result, patients come from all over the world. During COVID, we expanded that to quite a bit of Zoom conferences that I was doing as networking with medical teams across in India, helping them manage patients when they were really sick. So that was something else that we did. But yes, with the advent of technology and the advent of recognition, my reach is far beyond just the clinic.
Which is very cool. I like that. And tell us, what is Active Power? You're the CEO of Active Power, but what is that?
Well, back in 2007, my mom was visiting me, and she was having bad arthritis and could not sleep. And she was intolerant to a lot of the standard anti-inflammatory drugs, which would tear her stomach up. So I concocted a liniment for her in my kitchen. And since I have a chemistry background, so I managed to use herbs and other compounds and compounded a liniment that worked. And so after that, I set up a small basement lab, and I tinkered with the formulation. One thing led to another. It ended up becoming a patented drug, got some FDA approval as an OTC product, and then we were using it in the clinic. So it became very popular. And then a couple of friends of mine, they convinced me to start a company. So we started a company. So that we called it Active Power, and it still runs. And it's not a big company. It's a boutique practice that generates about $150,000 to $200,000 in revenue. It runs on autopilot. I really don't need to do much. My staff operate it all the time behind my seat. They just tell me when they run low on ingredients, and I place orders for it. But it works very well.
Yeah, that's my idea of a well-run business. I'm a businessman also, and my favorite kind of business is the one where my staff runs it. So I'm totally on board with you on that one.
Yeah. Yes. So
I love that.
so that's how again, that dimension is again the same thing. I created products that allow, there's a portion of some of the products of Active Power work on humans. There are portions of products of Active Power that are directed towards dogs, and both divisions work very well, and they are very popular among the people who use our products.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay. Let's take the opportunity to kind of redirect this conversation toward a broader topic. Because here on this program, we tended to have our topics fall into three broad categories. It's going to be something related to health, something related to finances and money, or something related to relationships. Those are like the broad categories we tend to talk about. And health, or wellness as it's often phrased these days, we always start with mindset. And I imagine that certainly plays a role in what you do as well. But you also take the more practical approach through what you know through your medical training and the alternative trainings that you've picked up over the years. So when you think about wellness, when you think about that concept of wellness or health, whichever way you prefer to think about it, what does that mean to you? Like if you were to define that, what is health in your view?
It's a state of being. Thank you, Henry. It's a state of being. It's a state of being, and it has a component that is rooted in the physical aspect. You really cannot be in a very comfortable state if you are experiencing physical discomfort. So there is a certain component of that is physically rooted in. Mm-hmm. But that does not mean that you cannot be healthy if you have an unhealthy body. There are a lot of patients I have seen who are dying, but were healthier than some of my well patients because their mindset was different. I'll give you an example. This is one of my patients works for the Library of Congress. She's an 88-year-old woman who for the last 12 years has consistently won the award in the Library of Congress as Librarian of the Year. And she has advanced breast cancer. And so I once had a patient, a young man who was that he was having some deadly disease. I examined him, and at the end of it, I told him that, I think you're quite well. I think you're just very anxious about certain things, and therefore you're scared that something bad's going to happen. But I can assure you that nothing bad's going to happen. You're well. Are you sure? And so as we walked out together from the exam, this lady walks in, and she said, "Hey, Dr. Iyer." So I said, "Hey," I said, "Shanta, meet this gentleman." So she goes and says, "Hi, I'm Shanta Murthy, and I'm dying with breast cancer." And with a big smile. and I turned to this man and I said, "See, that's what I mean by being well." So yes, you do need to have a functional body, but that does not mean that health and wellness is completely dependent on a 100% functional body. So that is why I call it a state of being. It's a state of mind. I have seen some very well people who have broken down bodies. So that brings me to how do you cultivate a mindset that is rooted in a state of being that allows you to be healthy. And the one common feature I have found in everyone who has that mindset, that what I call the healthy mindset, is that they root their existence, their self-identity, their core being is rooted in something that is much larger than themselves. And because they are rooted in something that is much bigger than the dimensions of their body, their physical circumstances, whether it concerns their body or it concerns their immediate substance of their life, does not define their mind. Because their self-identity is rooted in something bigger than just the circumstances of their life. And different people call it different things. They call it, these people are rooted in a purpose. They have a purpose. They have a why. They have this or they have that. They have passion. But regardless, the common element is that it is rooted in something bigger than their body or their immediate circumstances of their life. And that, in essence, is what would drive. And, there are cliche words that people use it. People use a life of abundance, a life of... they use words to capture the sense of that. But in all its different nomenclatures, the essence is always the same. It is always something much bigger than the time and space definitions of their body.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one factor. So anyone who has a belief system something along those lines, they already have a step up. They have given themselves an important starting place.
Mm.
Yeah, they already are. They have leaped forward. Yeah, they have leaped forward, and they are ahead of the game right there. Mm-hmm. And if I were to say that the one thing that I would like to impart to anybody coming to me as a student would be, how do you consistently root yourself in a state of being that is bigger than yourself? Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, then it is impossible not to succeed in life. It is impossible to not be productive. It is impossible not to be wealthy. It is impossible not to be happy. It simply cannot happen. If you're rooted in something larger than yourself, then those other factors automatically accrue by default. You don't have to strive for it.
What do you think about that, Anne-Marie? Does that resonate?
It certainly does. And it's in the UK, because I'm over in the UK, Ravi, and we don't pay for our healthcare. We can have private healthcare, but most of it's under the National Health Service. And our doctors are so overworked, and they just literally prescribe something. So you'll get a drug to cover it. And I just think if we went more into the mindset, what's going on with you? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? If we spend that extra 20 minutes with a client or a patient and assist them on their mindset and their mind health, I just think it would cure so much more than a pill.
So let me go back to a statement you just made in the beginning of your thing, that you said our doctors are so overworked. I want to go a little bit into that, the concept of being overworked. My normal day is a 14-hour day. That is an average day. I get up at 4:30 every morning. I'm up usually at 4:30. I may laze a little bit in bed, a little bit here and there, but I'm on my feet on the ground by 5 a.m. If not at 4:30. So, and then I am in bed around 10 p.m. Sometimes it may be a little late. I have averaged about 6 hours sleep for years. I have averaged about I'm 65 years old, and I think the majority of my life I have averaged about 5.5 hours sleep.
Right.
But 6 hours is also happens more. I never feel overworked. So I see 25 to 30 patients a day on an average day. During the pandemic, we saw 80 patients a day.
Gosh.
Some days we saw 100 because we were the only practice open and we were seeing all comers, whereas other doctors closed. So our volume soared.
Right.
We divided our clinic into inside the clinic, and then we expanded to the parking lot, which was 10,000 square feet. So suddenly our clinic was now from 3,000 square feet, it expanded to 13,000 square feet. And so the sick people were staying in their cars. We would walk out and we would see them in the car. And the well people, we allowed them to come into the clinic. There were days on those days where there were a few days where I felt tired at the end of the day, but I never felt overworked. So the idea of being overworked comes from an idea that you are unable to deal with the demands being placed on you.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with being fatigued. So fatigue is a physical sensation, but overwork is a mental situation. The being overworked, and that comes from an idea that somehow you are limited in resources. And I'll expand this further. People, the vast majority of people in the world, they live lives as if the things that are important for them, that matter to them, are in short supply. They live like that. See, it's like they feel that if they don't grab it while they get the chance, it'll go away. It'll be taken away by somebody else, or it will disappear, or it will it'll decay, it'll no longer be available. And because of that, they have to rush, they have to grab it out of somebody else's hands, or even snatch it out of their mouths if necessary. Because somehow there is not enough of things to go around. And I call this the poverty mindset, because the not enough life is a poverty that can never be filled, because everything is not enough. Not enough love, not enough time, not enough health, not enough money, not enough energy, not enough friends, not enough recognition, not enough this, not enough that. It's always not enough.
Yep, you're living in a world of lack.
Yes. And even the people who want to improve themselves, they are improving from a state of not enough. I don't have enough of this quality or this quality or this skill. And therefore, I have to now go do these things so that I get to this new place where I'll have enough of this. And you know what? When they get there, they still have not enough.
Yeah.
So the thing I realized very young, fortunately for me, I realized that the things that matter in my life are not dependent on time and space. And I'll tell you why. Because everyone thinks that the things that matter are physical objects. Mm-hmm. They think that they are physical objects bounded by time and space. And therefore, there is a time when they are there. There's a time when they were not there. There's a time when they are there. And there will be a time when it will not be there again. And therefore, they better get it while it is there. So, as long as you live life like that, you are always poor.
Yeah, completely agree.
there is never, ever a time when you will be sufficient. But if you recognize that the things that are important to you exist inside your head in the relationship that you have with the act of enjoying those things, then suddenly they are no longer bound by time and space. And you can command at will when those things manifest for you.
Absolutely.
Not many people know how to do that.
Well, that does raise the next question. How do you do that?
You do that by becoming rooted in an idea that what you do serves a larger entity. And therefore, you will be given the tools at the time when it needs to be fulfilled. And if you don't have the tools now, it means that there is no need to fulfill it right now.
I love that last bit.
So this is the problem. Every day in the morning, I learned this when I started my practice. I found something very simple. The first 2 years of my practice, I did not give my pager to anybody. I was on call 24/7, 365. Then one day, I woke up in the middle of the night with a terrible pain in my stomach, staggered to the bathroom, hugged the toilet, and started throwing up. And then all night I kept throwing up and throwing up and throwing up, and I could not stop until finally in the morning I told my wife to take me to the hospital, and I checked myself in. They found that I had developed a small ulcer at the outlet of my stomach. And it had that outlet, and it had swollen that outlet so big that the outlet had shut down, so the stomach juices could not go down. And so the only way it could do is to bring it up. So as a result, I was vomiting uncontrollably. So they put me there, and they gave me an intravenous medication. Within about 5 hours, the swelling came down, and I was feeling better. But lying there in bed in the hospital, I suddenly realized that if I died right then and there, every one of my patients would be able to find another doctor within 24 hours. And at that moment, I realized something very, very fundamental. I realized that for me to be of use to the world, I had to first reward myself. And I recognized for the first time, we are all taught a very fundamental principle from childhood that do not take what you have not earned. Mm-hmm. We have been taught that from childhood, that you should not take what you did not earn. What is not yours, if you did not earn it, or if it's not yours, you can't take it. And we learn this lesson so forcefully that we feel that we have to earn everything 3 times over before we can even take it. We become strangers to receiving. Mm. And we do not understand that there is the same universal power that commands you to give to everyone else, equally commands that you should receive from everyone else also. And that if you refuse to receive what is rightfully yours, that gift that was to come to you is not going to sit there. It will be taken by someone who did not earn it.
Interesting way of phrasing that.
And you are responsible for that person's sin of getting what he did not earn.
Oh my.
See,
We had a conversation. Sorry, go on, Ravi.
I'm so sorry. So this is very, 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 this is difficult for people to get it. That how can you be sinful for refusing? I recognize this lying there in the hospital. And I call this the power of saying no. If you don't say no, when you say no to something, you are saying yes to something else. Saying no is as much a virtue as saying yes. And until you can truly say no, you can't say yes at all to anything. The two go hand in hand. To say no, you need to know what your values are. You see, every person needs to have certain things that are not available for sale. The only thing that differentiates a woman of virtue and a woman on the street is the ability to say no. Chastity
It's having your
is
personal boundaries, isn't it?
Pardon? Yes. The ability to actually say no defines values. It defines what you will not trade, what is not for sale at any price. Everyone needs to have certain things that are not for sale. And they need to know what is not for sale. Otherwise, you are up for grabs for every passerby.
It's a good point.
Yeah, know your value.
Once I decided that, I went back to my office and I made a simple set of rules. At 5 o'clock, I'll get up and go, no matter how much work is left on the table. And I've then discovered a week later something wonderful. I discovered that anything that did not get done in 24 hours magically did not need to get done ever. I found that 90% of my work did not need to get done the same day.
Right.
And if I did not need to get done the same day, the next day it did not need to get done at all.
I love that.
Because I suddenly realized the world does not know what is important and what is unimportant.
That's
and
true.
they present everything to you as if it is important.
Mm-hmm.
True things that are of great importance will demand your action in some way that is undeniable and is so obvious that you will do it. And if you can actually let it go and walk away, then, it's not important.
Yeah, if you can actually walk away from it, it means you were giving your attention in a high energy way to something you really didn't need to.
Yes.
You were setting yourself up, basically.
Yes. So then suddenly, all of a sudden, delegation did not really, all matter of things started falling into place spontaneously without effort. Simply because I said no and set some boundaries for myself. That's all.
I love that.
but everything fell into place. Mm-hmm. And then I started realizing that the things that matter to me are available to me at will. And now I could focus on things that really matter, really are important. So I can see for the other aspect is something that I discovered around the same time was the dichotomy between experience and narrative. See, this whole thing about urgency, something comes to you and there's a story about it. They'll say, oh, doc, you have to pay attention. This is something now. We have to do it now. Right. So-and-so patient called. He wants you to call you back. So there is a story about that. It is not just a request on a piece of paper. There is something there's a conversation about that. And that conversation is different than the actual words on the paper, please call this patient now.
Mm-hmm.
I began to realize that 99% of people live their life in the conversation rather than in the experience of those words.
Oh, yeah.
And if you are able to dissect the narrative of a circumstance away from the experience of a circumstance, you can suddenly pause the sensory cyclone of life and stand at the eye of the storm in a sense of great calm. And in that moment, in that sensory eye of the sensory cyclone, you can see all the demands spinning around you fast. And if you move out of the eye for just a little bit, you will get sucked into the narrative and spun out of control. But standing in that sensory experience, you can calmly pick and choose which narratives you want to pay attention to.
I love this
Suddenly
concept.
you have infinite time. Yes.
I love this concept because this is a concept that basically says, don't get caught up in the narrative. Don't get caught up in the storyline. It's easy to do. We all do. We love stories. I mean, let's be honest. We all love stories. We're story driven. Our entertainment is story driven. Our politics is story driven. Our news cycle is story driven. Everything is story driven. And so it's easy to get sucked into all of that. But like you're reminding us, we don't have to be in the story. We don't even have to be paying attention to the story. We can actually change the story by giving our attention in a different way. We can step outside of the story and realize, oh, the story just stopped because I stopped paying attention to it. I
exactly. But it is a learned skill, like balance on a bicycle. See, like balance on a bicycle, it is you have to work at it, and the work you do is an exercise called mindful awareness.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that exercise, I do it through a method where I just watch my breath. And I have been doing it since I was 16 years old. All right. And now I have become very good at it in 44 years, more than that now. What is 16? Now 50 years, 49 years now. So in 49 years, I become very good at it. But once you get good at it, then you are like Lionel Messi. Your feet are dribbling the ball, but your eyes are on the other side of the field.
Mm.
Yeah.
See, but that's exactly what I mean by being calm in the eye of the storm. Life is a sensory cyclone. You're barraged with input all the time. And now with technology and, smartphones and constant connection all the time, mm-hmm. That constant connectivity sucks you into the narrative despite your will. You don't have any control over the narrative. The narrative rules you. So you really have to develop the skill. Once you develop the skill, you can dance through life. There's an enormous lightness of being that suffuses through you. And then wherever you go, you carry this like a bubble. And people who come in the ambit of your presence experience that. They experience a space around you. And because they experience that space, during that time when they are with you, they feel good. And then you suddenly become attractive to people because people will seek you out because somehow in your presence, they feel different. Mm-hmm. You don't need to say a word. So then you become attractive to people. So business opportunities come your way. You become popular. You become magnetic.
I love the way you describe that. That's very, very well done. And quite a different way from what we normally talk about, isn't it, Anne-Marie? I mean, it's the same general ideas we talk about.
Same thing in a different way,
the perspective is so cool. I really like that. Yeah. Do you have
And
any questions for Ravi?
No. But I arrived at this independently over my life, a little bit by accident. See, I have ADHD. When I was, but I did not know I had ADHD until I was 58 years old. Just barely 7 years ago is when I found out. But by then I had already done my MD, I had done my PhD, I had gone to Harvard, I had done all my residencies. So I had struggled through life. But I was born with a mind that was always in ferment, that was spouting a narrative that was uncontrollable. But I had another aspect of me that I was blessed with. I was blessed with a little bit of insight. I was also blessed with a sense that I was not entirely a victim of my circumstances. And I was blessed with an enormous tenacity and resilience and a refusal to believe that I was not as good as my younger brother, who did not have this burden, with whom I used to get compared with. Because my parents saw me as brilliant, but would be frustrated by the fact that I could not focus. And in their well-meaning way, they would say, oh, look, why can't you be like him? Like, you see, look at him. Do this. And I would, and there was a part of me that said, damn it, I'm 10 times more smarter than he is. And they are all the time praising him. I mean, I weathered through that, and I've come to completion with all of that myself. But so I learned early on that I had to do something to succeed, to realize my potential. So
I'm reminded of something. One of my other co-hosts who does the Tuesday shows with me, his name is Joel Elson. He actually lives just south of you in Richmond, Virginia. And he also has ADHD. He describes it as his superpower. And the reason he describes it as his superpower is because despite what everybody else says, he says what it actually gives him is the ability to focus. It's just that it gives him the ability to focus on what he wants to focus on, not on what somebody else wants him to focus on.
Exactly. And that's what I did. That's absolutely. So there is something called hyper-focus, and I always had that. But what I did not have was the ability to choose what I wanted to hyper-focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So once I realized I could stand in the space, I had focus 10 times the capacity of anybody else. And that's the reason why I could do all the things that I did. Because they would come with ease to me once I learned. All I needed to do was find that eye of the storm and be able to stand in that eye all the time at will. Once I'd found how to stand in the eye, then I could play with the storm.
And there's a key portion of your own story that illustrates that well, because like you said, your parents were wondering why couldn't you be like your younger brother, because that's what they wanted. It wasn't so much what you needed, it was what they wanted. They wanted you to behave like your younger brother because they figured, well, that's the ultimate optimum way for a growing child to behave, without realizing that that was not the optimum ultimate way for Ravi to behave.
Yeah. But, they were well-meaning. They loved me deeply. Sure. They still love me. My father is going to be 96 in December this year.
Good for him.
Parents, we all suffer our parents' well-meaning intentions, and that's just the way it is. There's not much we can do about it. You recognize that being a parent is the one thing that you have to, it's all on the seat of the pants learning, on the job learning. Nobody goes to school and learns how to be a parent. So So you suffer through that process both ways, both sides of the coin. But anyway, the thing that, and in India nobody knew about ADHD when I was growing up. They didn't. Even now, barely people are beginning to understand the concept of neurodiversity and neurotypical and all those things. It's even in the US, the idea of neurodiversity is so new that people are not really, they're not comfortable. They're still stuck in the disorder mentality, attention deficit disorder, autistic spectrum disorder. It's still disorders. They don't really understand that it's diversity, but that's a different matter. But coming back to living your abundance or living our abundance, this is how you live. This is actually available to everyone. The sensory cyclone exists for everyone, and so does the eye of the sensory cyclone. All you have to do is step within. And once you step within, you can stand there and you can rule the world, because the whole world exists only in your relationship to it. It does not exist. Because think about it. Every one of us goes to sleep, right? And the world disappears.
That's true.
So if that was the case, then it existed only in your relationship with it. I mean, you people are going to say, "Oh, don't tell me that physical objects don't." They do exist, but the ultimate way in which they really exist is inside your head. We are all travelers in our own matrix. We are all neos. We are all neos. We are all, we can all be the chosen one, or we can be all the other objects in the matrix. It's only one choice you have.
The red pill or the blue pill.
Yep.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. I think my mind's still going in the fact that the whole world disappears when I go to sleep. That's like, boom.
Yeah.
Yes. And not only that, think about it. You go to sleep, you dream that you were going to a party with 1,000 people. You wake up. Do you actually ask if those 1,000 people woke up also?
I love that.
So where did those 1,000 people exist? Inside your head. You were eating sushi in that party in your dream. Did you wake up feeling full of, did you wake up feeling the sting of wasabi? You start thinking about these things, it's pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've gone down a lot of rabbit holes. I mean, that's just part of what we do around here.
We're just going to come up with all these scenarios now, Walt. I'll just be messaging you now going, what about this?
Well, it's fun. It's fun to go down rabbit holes like that, in part because that is part of the narrative desire that we all have. It's a way of basically building our own narratives as we're going along. But it's also a way of exploring alternative narratives. And that's really what you're doing with us here, Ravi. You're sharing with us an alternative way of understanding. How did you describe it? The sense cyclone? Is that what you called it?
No,
the sensory cyclone?
The sensory cyclone.
Sensory cyclone, right. Cyclone. Which is a great description. I mean, I call it the roller coaster, but it amounts to the same thing. The fact that we're just inundated with all this data coming into our senses all the time that we're consciously awake, and we're trying to find a way to filter it and deal with it. And, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed by all this stuff. And as you pointed out, all we have to do is kind of step out of it for a moment. Just step out of it and say, how do you call it? Like you're in the middle of the eye of the storm. You just stand in the eye of the storm. Yeah. And, there's all that cycle going on. Yeah. So this is a really interesting conversation we're having. This has been very, very interesting from a number of different viewpoints. One thing I want to ask you about though, Ravi, because you're a medical man, you're also obviously very, what we would call spiritually oriented. And as such, you kind of are one of those people who are on the edge of modern medicine because there's that mainstream that is resistant to a number of different alternative ideas like this one. So I'm curious from your perspective, do you see modern Western medicine shifting, or do you see it continuing to just stay in its old paradigm? How does it look from your viewpoint?
Well, Western medicine is very powerful in certain respects, and I would never attempt to even say that it is flawed. It is not. I am very successful in marrying both sides of the coin very easily. I grew up in India. I trained myself in Western medicine. So all my training is Western medicine, but my growing and my indoctrination, or let us say osmotic, organic immersion, has been in traditional Eastern way of approaching health and well-being. So I acquired a lot of stuff growing up that I use in everyday affairs in my business. So I'm able to pick and choose which tools I use. Western medicine recognizes, even the best practitioners of Western medicine, they recognize that there are dimensions to health and well-being that is better approached from a non-Western way. There is a part of Western medicine that is very much influenced by the commercial aspect of medicine. So I'll give you an example. There is a need. So the regulatory agency, like the FDA, was created to eliminate variability in medications so that people don't see. Every medicine that you have originated from some living creature. Even to this day, all the drugs that are being used have their origins in some fungus, microbe, some plant, some moss or fern somewhere in the world. Pharmaceutical companies have huge libraries of natural compounds that they are constantly testing and mining. They have drug discovery teams touring the rainforests of the world, the deserts and mountains of the world, to go to remote things. There are teams of biologists and zoologists who are harvesting animals and creatures and studying them to see what molecules are there in these creatures or these plants that may have biological value in humans. So even to this day, Western medicine resorts to that, except that once they get it, they try to synthesize it in the lab for two reasons. Because one, they can't patent a natural compound, and therefore they don't have a business model that can be sustained upon a natural product. That's one. Number two, they want to standardize the manufacture and purity of it from batch to batch, so that if you are dependent on a biological compound that is extracted from a leaf or a herb, depending on which season you grew that particular plant in, you might have different concentrations of the compound in that plant. So the natural product may vary from batch to batch, and they don't like variations.
Yes.
Yeah. So these two factors, coupled with the fact that science is done in a reductionist method, which is take a complex system, break it down in component parts, and see what loss of function happens when you remove a piece from it, versus what is the gain of function when you put that piece back. So science always analyzes processes in a Newtonian way, cause, effect. Where science falls apart is when there is complex relationships, where the individual components by themselves are not capable of full effect, but it is the position, the relative relationship of multiple components into each other that produces the final effect. I'll give an example. A plant produces a biological benefit in a fever, but you have to grind up the whole plant, not just the leaf, which means that there's some compound in the root, there's some compound in the leaf, and there's some compound in the flower that together presented to the body produces a health and wellness. This is very comfortably accepted in Eastern medicine. Western medicine cannot, it falls apart because one, they need each compound in its pure state. They need to control the manufacture of each of those compounds. And most biological whole herb products have 20 different compounds, the ratios of which are very, very small, and they collectively produce an effect and not individually. And when you try to analyze it, you Western science, and the minute you tease them apart, the whole thing falls apart, and then they say, oh, you know what, maybe it was just placebo. So that's the problem. That's the problem. So this is where the holistic thing comes into place, where the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. And that is what I mean by relationship. It is the relationship that is more important than the actual components themselves. It is their actual position relative to each other. Just like in an organization, it is not the front desk clerk and the front desk secretary and the back office person, but the relative way in which the work flows between them that makes the final product. So these are the things that Western medicine is understanding, but still will not do it. And that is why Western medicine is so procedure-oriented. Because procedure is Newtonian. I can go cut something out, I can add something in, I can put a machine in or a chip in or a device in. All right. So there is a value in both. My ideal way of doing it is to try to extract the best of both worlds and bring them both to the table for the benefit of the human being, which I try to do most of the time. I'm all for surgery. When something needs to be removed, it needs to be removed. That's it. But when somebody comes and tells me, I have an article that I wrote, can you find some natural compound that will allow me to lose my weight or make me thin, that kind of thing. And I laugh at it because I say that everything natural is not necessarily good. Cobra venom is 100% deadly and it's also 100% natural, but yet cobra venom is the source of clot-busting drugs that save you from a stroke. So people seem to think that everything natural is good and everything synthetic is bad, and people think that everything synthetic is the best in science and everything natural is just, snake oil. Neither statement is entirely true.
It's a great perspective. I really like that. That's very helpful too. Ravi, unfortunately, as usual, we're running out of time. That's what happens when we get into these conversations where it gets very, very fascinating. And once again, it has happened here as well. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to do before we part company. First of all, for someone who wants to find out more about what you're doing and your practice and so forth, how do they find you?
Oh, just go to my website. It's driyer.com. So driyer.com.
All right. So we'll make sure that we'll include a link in the description for the show so that people can find that easily enough. Then one last thing I'd like to do with each of my guests, I've been doing this now for the last year and a half or so because I discovered that we were kind of skipping this part. And I think it's important to recognize it. You, like so many people who come onto this show, you give. You have made it your life to give and help people and to serve them in as many ways as you can. You do it through your practice, but you also do it through appearances like on this podcast, through your writings, through all the different ways that you share with the larger global audience. And in so doing, you actually end up helping people that you've never met and that you've never seen because they pick up ideas from you, right? And we kind of skip that part. So I'd like to make it a practice to say on behalf of those people that you've never met and that you've never seen, thank you for what you've been doing for them as well, because you are making a difference in their lives.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to contribute. People seldom realize that it is a privilege to contribute.
Yeah, I think it's important. So, Dr. Ravi Iyer, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate everything. And Anne-Marie, I mean, once again, it's been great to have you back. You and I didn't actually have a whole lot to say. Ravi just kind of took over the show, but that was okay. We still got to
Absolutely. I was more than happy to listen. Oh no, it was worth listening to. It was a beautiful perspective.
Yeah, we definitely loved it. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.